Starting deorbit burn. There's no room for error.
So, that piece was made about 3 years ago. And it's one of my favorite pieces of VR because it's very simple. It's quite short. And it's been seen by 70,000 paying customers. But 3 years is a long time in immersive technology. And what I'm going to try and talk to you about tonight is that was state of the art 3 years ago. It really was. What we're trying to do at UKRI and through a project called the Audience of the Future Challenge is move beyond the state of the art creatively in terms of what we can offer up to audiences, technologically, and in terms also of how we can take VR, AR, MR, XR, you can choose anything apparently and put R after it, and it turns out to be immersive. And through funding innovative companies and allowing them to connect with the research base, we can power the UK creative sector to become expert in using this new medium. Because I think, again, one of the interesting things about the Tim Peake piece is that no one would ever have made that as a piece of standalone VR. It was made because the Science Museum Group knew that they were going to buy from the Russian space program, Tim Peake's capsule, and it was used as a marketing device. And it was never expected to run for very long, possibly when it was in London. It's still 2.5 years later touring around the UK. So it's actually an interesting piece, but it's advertising something else. And what would happen if immersive experiences were the main event rather than marketing something else? So what we've got is, and this is an amazing first in some ways for the creative industries, is we've got an amount of money, 33 million, which sounds great, but it's out of what the government thinks of as the science budget, but it's actually to finance innovation in content. And innovation in content enabled by new technologies. Not the new technologies themselves, but the content and experiences we can make for audiences enabled by that technology. So we have to have one of these challenge statements. So when we're setting this up and trying to explain it to ministers, it's always good to have it in one sentence, what you're trying to do. So again, in the context of the science budget, what we said we were going to do was help UK creative companies capture new global audiences and develop a leading market position, because you have to say things like that because the Treasury read it, in creative content, products and services, but by adapting, exploiting and developing immersive technologies. So this was quite a surprise, and I think is a first in a way to use the science budget to make content, new experiences for audiences powered by new technology. So I'm just going to talk about some of the things that we're doing. Downstairs, there are some of the projects that we funded, which are really exciting. Some really innovative companies. We're trying to make sure that a lot of the funding that we are doing is to companies who have never had this kind of funding before. And that's thanks very much to Andy Clark, our head of communications for this program, for bringing those companies together here. But I'm going to talk to you about the range of stuff that we're doing, and then at the end there is there's both a kind of challenge to you all to kind of help us on something that we can't work out on our own, and also a kind of I'll flag up a new opportunity that we've just opened. What we're doing? Well, we decided that one of the things was, if you want to move on the state of the art in a creative sector, actually the state of the art moves on by projects. But at the moment, there isn't the confidence in the private sector to invest in the next generation of immersive experiences. So many of you will be working with marketing or promotions and using VR and AR in that. What we wanted to do was see if we could spend half of this money by creating 4 big demonstrators to try and shift the sector on. So one of the things that we're doing is, and for anybody who loves to travel to Birmingham or Hamburg, the first prototypes of this we'll release there at the end of May in Birmingham and to live audiences in Hamburg in September, is a thing called Weaver. So we set a challenge saying we wanted proposals for people who could change the nature of sports broadcasting with immersive technologies. Got fantastic pitches in from conventional sports, but the project that excelled above all the others was esports. And you can kind of understand why, because if we're doing for audience of the future, they did a very simple pitch, which is they are the audience of the future, and they're early adopters. So Weaver is about trying to create a new remote audience through immersive experiences for esports, which are currently, as it were, mainly experienced in stadiums. So it's about, in a way, reimagining sports broadcasting by bringing it, using these technologies to bring it into the home live, which means creating a whole new grammar of how you do that. And it also, hopefully, will inspire those more conventional sports which have a broadcast platform. Obviously, in the case of sports like football, that's where most of the money comes from. But also, it'll enable them to dip their toe in the water and learn from what we're doing with immersive experiences. And the thing about all of these projects is they're all collaborations. So these are quite big projects. We're punting 4 or 5 million of grant funding into each of these. The commercial partners in it and the SME partners are up to doubling that money. So we've got a consortia trying to deliver these, and these are not closed projects. So if any of these interest you, contact us. We will put you in contact with them, because none of these partnerships, so here we've got ESL, who are the biggest esports tournament holders in the world, working with a series of UK SMEs, so Rewind and Focal Point VR, Doc10, a big CGI GFX company up in Manchester, the University of Will providing the kind of research impetus there. But they know that they can't solve all these problems, and they've only got 2 years to do it, which is obviously ridiculous, but that's the nature of working with government in the UK at the moment. We ask people to do impossible things, amazing things on ludicrous timescales, but everybody seems to be up for the challenge. So one of our others is performance features. So what we're looking at here is how immersive experiences, there will certainly be VR elements to this, but will be big immersive audio elements to this as well, and augmented reality. How can that change the nature of performance? And looking at two things, how will it change the nature of how we create performances, and how will it change the nature of how we consume performances? So again, a big consortium working on this, which has some of the UK creative companies in the performance sector, like Punch Drunk and Philharmonia, Marshmallow Laser Feast, and the Royal Shakespeare Company, who have really experimented with this stuff and believe that this is part of their creative mix for the future. But also we've got large global technology companies in here. So we've got Intel, we've got Magic Leap, and we've got Epic Unreal as well. So this is one key component of this, is how you create all this stuff in Game Engine, how you create new workflows to allow us to do this. So one of the things, so the RSC are already starting to produce things. There's a beautiful little thing that we all took out to South by Southwest that they've done with Magic Leap, which is just a simple tabletop theatre kind of model using the mixed reality goggles, current Magic Leap technology. One of our other big demonstrators, so we wanted to look at visitor experience, because whether it's theme parks, whether it's museums and galleries, there seems a huge opportunity to delight and engage audiences with a mixture of these technologies. So this partnership is headed by Factory 42, or an SME, sit down in Somerset House, not a huge company at the moment, but they're running this whole consortium with two of our national museums. Science Museum, Natural History Museum. Obviously, there's a slightly Ron Seal quality to some of the thinking there, in that they've called it, at the moment, Dinosaurs and Robots. It's not Dinosaurs v Robots, which I feel might be more, even more interesting. So what they're trying to do is create a kind of things that come from immersive theatre, things that come from mixed reality, and things that come from escape rooms, to create a group quest-type adventure that brings all these technologies together. And obviously thinking that if you can create a platform that can do that, you can run a whole load of stories through it. And you can also create a new distribution chain. China alone is building 120 science museums over the next 5 years. So it's an interesting idea that the museum of the future may not rely on taking objects from around the world and putting them in a single room, but creating experiences that we can export to multiple audiences. And the fourth one of our big demonstrations we only launched last Friday. So this is, again, Tiny Rebel Games are in the lead of this. So this is a tiny company that now is working with big agencies like Potato London, who are in the room, probably. Wave, Ollie, wherever you are. Hello. But trying to create a multiplayer, location-based, mobile, augmented reality game that's driven by a narrative. What we announced last Friday is they're going to be working with Aardman Animation and Wallace & Gromit. So a lot of what we do is about trying to create collaborations that otherwise wouldn't happen and put them together with research partners so that they can investigate some of the core technologies to push this stuff forward. So those are our big four demonstrators, but we've got, we're just announcing this week 20 projects in what we've called production innovation. So this isn't just about pushing the experience forward, this is about pushing the way we make things forward. So innovating in the production workflow. And I'm going to only talk about one project. We have the projects that you can experience downstairs, but so in terms of production innovation, one of the projects that we got, it's interesting, you get a lot of press for if you mix Tommy Shelby with AI. It turns out that that's such an interesting proposition, even the Daily Mail can grab onto that without necessarily delving down into what the project is underneath. But so this is ministerial have won one of our production innovation awards, and this is about developing within a game subtle AI technologies around the characters. So characters that are responsive, because one of the things as you move into an immersive environment is you can't just walk around and watch things. You know, you would want Auntie Poll, if you walked into a pub, to at least acknowledge your presence, or possibly actually with the Peakers, you wouldn't want them to acknowledge your presence, but you would want them in some way, the environment, to be responsive to you. So the use of AI within that game type environment to enhance the immersiveness of the audience experience is one of the things. Other production innovation awards that we've got, the projects are just starting now, look at haptics, look at the use of immersive in the film production workflow, and so on. So we've got a lot of projects that are just starting up. Again, we'll be trying to bring those out to as many people as possible, because I think even possibly Ian would admit that nobody knows quite all the answers to the problems that they've set themselves, and so they will need to work with other creatives to solve them. We've also, and this is perhaps something that will be of interest to a wider audience, is we've, with the National Film School and Royal Holloway, which is part of University of London, and Brunel University, we set up a National Centre for Immersive Storytelling. So this is about experimental production and developing people who are already in perhaps a different sector of the industry to be able to tell stories, whether it's writer, an art director, through to in immersive technologies. And then we've got an award that a new program that we're just announcing. It's on Immerse UK's website today. You can enter this from the 20th of May. So here, this is an investment program. So we're putting our research funding alongside private investment to invest in companies who are developing technology pipelines or creative pipelines around immersive technology. So, question is, why are we doing this? Why is this kind of, it seems to me, quite a big deal? Well, one of the things is, and you probably, you know, perhaps you haven't been subjected to these next three slides. I know I've seen them so many times. It's sometimes you don't appreciate the numbers. So the UK creative industries are a massive success story. Over 100 billion in GVA to the UK economy. They are massively important to employment within the UK. and they're also massively important in terms of exports. So when it comes to R&D funding, that's quite interesting, because we don't have any R&D funding for the creative industries, by and large. And yet the creative industries, what R&D funding goes into is traditional science-heavy sectors like automotive, like, say, oil and gas. There's a kind of robots in oil and gas program that's running at the moment, and in life sciences, pharmaceuticals, other areas that the UK absolutely excels at. But the UK creative industries are bigger than all three of those sectors combined. What we lack is a story about how our creative process becomes thought of as research and development. So in the life sciences, for instance, there's a fairly simple process that everybody understands. So someone creates some new knowledge by doing some experiments in a lab. This is Dorothy Hodgkin, first British woman to win the Nobel Prize. Then there's a whole bunch of slightly mysterious work goes on to develop that idea into something that might turn into something. So you might call that kind of translational or industrial research. And out at the end, pops in Dorothy Hodgkin's place, the structure of insulin. We don't have that simple model. What we want to do with these experiments and things that we're funding is try and build a model that's as compelling as government as that science and engineering model. So we need to work out what that is. And that's where we're going to need the help of everybody who's doing these programs to try and think about, where does new knowledge come from in our sector? What is the knowledge that has future value to companies down the line? How long does this take? In the life sciences, gap between the lab and application to a patient is reckoned to be 15 years. So there's lots of things that can happen. I don't think that's the case in our sector. And I certainly don't think it's the case in, in those areas which are digital. But we do need a model to convince people that what we've got at the moment is some interesting starting points, but it's a small down payment on the funding that we can accept in the future if we can work this model out. So please help us engage with some of our projects. Go and have a look at this new opportunity. So there's £3 million on offer, and that's why I'd leave that till last. Thank you.